What happens when an undercover CEO watches his employee pay for a struggling father's meal? The lunch rush was in full swing at Grill & Go, a fast-paced fast food restaurant where orders were shouted over sizzling grills and cashiers juggled, customers like circus performers. Among the flurry of voices and clattering trays stood Ethan, a young employee barely out of high school. Despite the chaos, Ethan kept a calm smile as he handed out orders at the counter. Ethan had been working at Grill & Go for 6 months now. He knew the routine: greet, take orders, swipe cards, and repeat. But today felt different. There was tension in the air, like something was about to happen. Across the restaurant, James Donovan, the CEO of Grill & Go, sat quietly in the corner, disguised in a faded hoodie and worn jeans. His sharp eyes scanned the dining area, observing employees and customers alike. His goal: to understand how his business truly ran, the unfiltered, unscripted truth. He'd heard whispers about certain locations where staff struggled, and this branch had topped the list. Suddenly, the front door jingled, and in walked a man in a wrinkled shirt, holding the hand of a little girl. The man, Tom, looked exhausted, unshaven, with tired eyes and worn-out shoes. His daughter, Lily, clutched a small stuffed bear. They shuffled to the counter. "Hi there," Ethan greeted cheerfully. "What can I get you today?" Tom fumbled with his wallet, counting crumpled bills and coins. Just a kid's meal, please." Ethan's smile faltered for just a second. "That's it? Nothing for you?" Tom shook his head, eyes flicking nervously toward Lily. "No. This is fine." Ethan felt a pang of sympathy. Tom looked like he hadn't eaten in a while, yet he was giving the only meal to his daughter. Ethan knew better than to embarrass him, so he quietly rang up a kid's meal, then added a burger and fries for Tom without a word. "That'll be..." "Oh." Ethan glanced at the register screen. The total came out higher than what Tom had counted out in coins. Tom's face tightened, and he began scooping up the money to cancel the order. "It's all good," Ethan said quickly. He reached into his own pocket, pulling out his debit card. "I got you." No, I can't let you do that," Tom stammered. "Don't worry about it," Ethan smiled. "Everyone deserves a hot meal." Tom's eyes misted with gratitude. Thank you so much." James, still observing from his table, straightened in his seat. He'd seen employees smile for show, but this was different. Ethan had just paid out of his own pocket without hesitation. Minutes later, Tom and Lily were seated, enjoying their food. But James wasn't done observing yet. He kept an eye on Ethan, noting how the young cashier handled irritable customers, cleaned tables during downtime, and encouraged co-workers with jokes to keep morale high. Ethan wasn't just doing his job, he cared, but kindness doesn't always go unnoticed for the right reasons. "Hey!" a sharp voice barked from behind the counter. Carl, the branch manager, stormed toward Ethan. "What's this I hear about you giving away food?" Carl growled, his voice loud enough for customers to overhear. "It was just a meal," Ethan explained. "The guy was struggling. He had a kid." "I don't care," Carl shot back. "That's theft. You pay for what you take, period." "I did pay for it," Ethan replied calmly. "Out of my own pocket." "That's not the point," Carl snapped. "We have rules here. If you want to play hero, do it on your own time." Ethan's face flushed, but he held his tongue. Meanwhile, James's jaw clenched from his corner table. The way Carl was berating Ethan in front of customers was unacceptable. Moments later, Carl stormed back to his office, leaving Ethan frustrated, but composed. Ethan turned his attention back to customers, apologizing for the disruption. Despite everything, his smile returned. James leaned back in his chair, impressed and concerned. He knew Carl's type: managers obsessed with control, often to the detriment of their employees. If Carl was this aggressive in public, what was happening behind closed doors? James pulled out his phone and made a note to return tomorrow. He needed to see what kind of leadership was really running his store, and more importantly, what Ethan would face next. Little did Ethan know, his simple act of kindness had set something powerful in motion, something that would change everything. The afternoon crowd had thinned out at Benny's diner, leaving the place quiet except for the faint hum of the fryer and the soft clang of dishes from the kitchen. Nate, still in his oversized uniform shirt, stood behind the counter wiping down the stainless steel surface. His movements were fast and practiced, but there was a weight behind them, a tiredness that seemed far too heavy for someone his age. Evan Caldwell, still posing as an ordinary customer, sat tucked away at a corner booth sipping his now cold coffee. He'd been watching Nate all day. The young man barely slowed down, whether he was running orders, cleaning spills, or rushing trays to tables. He never seemed to rest. Then the door jingled, and a man walked in, disheveled, eyes sunken. His clothes were worn, his shoes scuffed, and his face carried the unmistakable strain of someone battling hard times. He hesitated near the door, looking at the menu overhead, digging through his empty pockets. Nate noticed him right away. He wiped his hands on his apron and stepped out from behind the counter. "Hey there," Nate greeted with a smile. "Can I get you something?" The man hesitated. Just some water, please." Nate frowned slightly but nodded. "Sure thing. Have a seat. I'll bring it over." As the man shuffled to a corner table, Nate hurried back to the kitchen. Evan watched as Nate spoke quietly to the cook, pointing at the homeless man. The cook shrugged, and Nate reached into his own wallet, pulling out a few crumpled bills. Moments later, Nate walked over to the man with a tray in hand, a steaming burger, fries, and a fresh drink. I didn't order this," the man stammered. "I know," Nate said, setting it down gently. "It's on me." The man's eyes welled up. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Nate said with a grin. "Just enjoy." But before the man could even take a bite, a voice barked across the diner. "Nate!" It was Greg, the manager, storming out from the back with narrowed eyes and a scowl. "What do you think you're doing?" "He's hungry," Nate said, his voice calm, but firm. "I paid for it." "You paid for it with what?" Greg scoffed. "Your paycheck barely covers your bills, and now you're buying meals for strangers?" "It's fine," Nate replied. "I've got it." "No." Greg snatched the tray right off the table. The burger slid onto the floor. "We don't give out handouts here." "Come on," Nate protested. "It's paid for." "Not your call," Greg spat. "You think you can just play hero with my business? If you can't follow simple rules, maybe you don't belong here." "Please," the man said quietly. I'm just trying to get by." "Then go try somewhere else," Greg snapped. Nate stood frozen, for a moment, then squared his shoulders. "You didn't have to do that." "And you don't get to tell me what I have to do," Greg shot back. "I'm the manager here, not you. Now get back behind the counter before I find someone who actually listens." Nate clenched his fists, but he turned away, his face tight with frustration. Evan had seen enough. He set his mug down and rose from his seat, walking purposefully toward Greg. "Excuse me," Evan said calmly, but his voice held authority. "We need to talk." "Oh yeah?" Greg scoffed, sizing him up. "And who are you supposed to be?" Evan reached into his jacket pocket and slowly unfolded his business card. He held it up for Greg to see. "I'm Evan Caldwell," he said, "owner of this diner chain." Greg's face paled. I didn't know you were—" "I've been here all day," Evan interrupted. "Watching, listening." He stepped closer, his eyes locked on Greg. "And what I just saw, that's not how we treat people," Greg stammered for words, but Evan wasn't finished. "I need you in my office first thing tomorrow morning," Evan said coldly. "For now, clock out and go home." Greg sputtered. "But," I said, "go." Greg shot a glare toward Nate before storming out the door. When Evan turned back to Nate, the young man's face was still pale. "I'm sorry," Nate stammered. I couldn't let him go hungry." "Don't apologize," Evan said firmly. "What you did, that was kindness, and this place could use more of it." Nate managed a small smile. "Thanks." "No," Evan said softly. "Thank you." The morning rush had settled. leaving Benny's diner in a calm lull. Nate was back behind the counter, wiping down surfaces and refilling condiment bottles. Despite his usual efficiency, there was a weight behind his movements today. After yesterday's confrontation with Greg, the young employee seemed on edge, his gaze constantly shifting toward the door as if expecting trouble to walk in at any moment. Evan Caldwell, still undercover, sat in his corner booth nursing a fresh cup of coffee. His thoughts were heavy. He knew he had handled Greg's behavior swiftly, but there was still more to address. Nate's quiet courage had left an impression, and Evan knew it couldn't go unrewarded. The door jingled, and a familiar face appeared, the homeless man from the day before. His shoulders were more hunched today, his expression more defeated. He paused by the door, scanning the room as if unsure he belonged there. Nate spotted him instantly and moved without hesitation. "Hey," Nate greeted warmly. "Glad you're back." The man gave a hesitant smile. I don't want to be any trouble." "No trouble at all," Nate assured him. "Come on, have a seat." The man hesitated, but eventually lowered himself into a booth. Evan watched as Nate returned to the counter and whispered something to the kitchen staff. Moments later, a fresh plate of eggs, toast, and bacon was prepared. This time, Nate didn't reach into his own wallet. The meal was covered by the house. Evan had made sure of that. As Nate delivered the meal, Greg stormed back through the diner's doors, face red and eyes locked on Nate. "What's this?" Greg barked, pointing at the homeless man. "I told you yesterday, we don't hand out free food." "It's taken care of," Nate replied, voice firm. "This is our guest." "Our guest?" Greg scoffed. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you're done here." "Wait," Evan interrupted, standing up from his booth. "He's not done." Greg turned, eyes narrowing. "Look, I don't know who you think you are, but—" "I told you yesterday," Evan cut in, pulling out his business card once again. "I'm Evan Caldwell, owner of this diner chain." The color drained from Greg's face. You said I was meeting you this morning," Greg stammered. I was gonna explain." "You don't need to explain," Evan said coldly. "I've seen enough." Greg swallowed hard. "Look, I thought I was protecting the business. We can't afford to give away food like this." "No," Evan replied, firmly. "You weren't protecting anything. You were humiliating people." He motioned toward the homeless man. "This is someone who's struggling, and instead of helping him, you treated him like a burden." Greg clenched his fists. "I was following policy." "Then policy's wrong," Evan said. His tone softened slightly as he turned to Nate. "You did the right thing, both yesterday and today." I just couldn't stand by," Nate said quietly. "He didn't deserve that." Evan nodded. "And that's exactly why you belong here." He turned back to Greg. "But you? I can't have someone like you representing my business." "Wait," Greg blurted. "You can't just fire me. I've been here for years." "Years don't make up for cruelty," Evan shot back. "Clean out your locker. You're done." Greg stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Evan turned back to Nate, who stood frozen in disbelief. I didn't expect you to." "You stood up when no one else did," Evan said firmly. "People like you, with heart, that's what this diner needs." He paused. "How'd you like to be the new manager?" Nate's eyes widened. "Me? You've already proven you care about the people here," Evan said with a smile. "That's exactly the kind of leadership I want." I don't know what to say," Nate stammered. "Say yes," Evan said with a grin. "I've got a feeling you'll do great." From the corner booth, the homeless man smiled quietly to himself, not just because he'd been fed, but because someone had finally seen what kindness could truly mean. The morning after the heated confrontation, Benny's diner felt unusually quiet. Nate stood behind the counter, staring blankly at the worn pages of a notepad, struggling to focus. The weight of Greg's words still echoed in his mind. Even though Evan had intervened, Nate couldn't shake the feeling that he had made things worse. Was his job still safe? Had his small act of kindness cost him everything? The door jingled, and Evan Caldwell stepped inside, no longer dressed as a casual customer. This time, he wore a crisp blazer, tailored to perfection, and held a leather portfolio under his arm. Heads turned as he walked through the diner. Staff whispered to each other in hushed tones, some eyeing Nate sympathetically, others nervously avoiding eye contact altogether. "Nate!" Evan called, his voice firm yet calm. Nate swallowed hard and approached the counter. "Sir, I didn't mean to cause any trouble yesterday," he started, his voice cracking. "I know," Evan interrupted, "and I'm here because of that. Can we sit down for a moment?" Moments later, they settled into a booth near the window. The morning sunlight streamed in, illuminating Nate's tired face. Evan studied him quietly for a moment, before speaking. "I heard everything Greg said to you," Evan began, "and I saw what you did for that man." "I wasn't trying to break the rules," Nate said quickly. He looked like he really needed help." "You did the right thing," Evan replied. "And that's exactly why I'm here," Nate blinked. "What do you mean?" "You showed compassion, Nate. You cared more about someone else than yourself. That kind of heart is rare. People like you are exactly what this company needs." "But," Greg said. "Greg's gone," Evan cut in. "After what I saw, I couldn't trust him to lead." Nate's eyes widened. "Wait, gone?" Evan nodded. "I made it clear this morning that Greg's no longer employed here." Nate looked down at the table, almost unsure how to react. "I don't want anyone losing their job because of me." "This wasn't because of you," Evan said gently. "It was because of Greg's choices." A long silence followed before Evan spoke again. "But I want to talk about your future." Nate's brow furrowed. "My future?" Evan reached into his portfolio and slid a neatly folded paper across the table. "This is a full scholarship application to Wilson Community College," Evan explained. "I know from your co-workers that you've been working here to support your mom and siblings." Nate's breath caught. I don't understand." "I've seen your work ethic, your kindness, your strength. You have potential, Nate. Far more than you probably realize. I'd like to sponsor your education, on one condition." "What condition?" Nate asked, barely able to believe what he was hearing. "That you accept a promotion to shift supervisor here at Benny's." Nate's eyes widened even further. "Wait, a promotion?" Evan smiled. "I need someone in charge who knows how to treat people right. Someone who leads with kindness. I think you're that person." "But I've never been a supervisor before," Nate said uncertainly. "What if I mess it up?" "Mistakes happen," Evan assured him. "But if you keep showing the heart you did yesterday, I know you'll make the right calls." Nate wiped at his eyes, overwhelmed by emotion. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Evan encouraged. "I believe in you." After a long pause, Nate smiled. Yes, I'll do it." Days later, Benny's Diner had a new energy. Employees bustled with pride under Nate's leadership. The atmosphere felt lighter, warmer. Customers seemed to linger longer, and the diner buzzed with conversation and laughter. Nate stood behind the counter, smiling as he handed a fresh cup of coffee to an elderly man who had been quietly reading his newspaper. The door jingled again, and Nate turned to see the homeless man from earlier standing nervously by the door. Nate walked over, extending his hand with a smile. "Hey," Nate greeted. "Welcome back." The man smiled sheepishly. I just wanted to say thank you for what you did. You didn't have to, but it meant a lot." "You don't have to thank me," Nate said warmly. "Everyone deserves a little kindness." The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a neatly folded $5 bill. "I don't have much," he said, "but I wanted to pay you back." Nate smiled softly and shook his head. "Tell you what." He gently pushed the money back into the man's hand. Next time someone needs a hand, you help them out. That's how you can pay me back." The man grinned, his eyes misting over. "Deal." Across the diner, Evan watched the exchange with a proud smile. He knew Nate would make the right choice, because kindness like that, it had the power to change everything. If you enjoyed this story of kindness and courage, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring content. Your support helps us share powerful stories like this one. See you next time.